Hey guys, it's Apo, and in this deep dive, we have 4 chapters. So, Cubase 12, we're looking at sampler track, we're looking at frequency EQ, we're looking at quadriphers, we're looking at the beloved groove agent. So, with it being a deep dive, we're going to show the more geeky type features. We're going to go right under the hood with things that you didn't know it could do, or maybe the stuff in there that you did know it could do, the instruments and plugins. So, let's crack on, and the first one we're looking at is sampler track. So this is a track all made within Cubase 12 Pro. A lot of the instruments and plugins can be quite relative to other versions of Cubase. I can explain that later on if you need to. So, for instance, this is Cubase 12 Pro, which will have Pad Shop 2, and Sampler Track, for instance, is available in all versions of Cubase. Quadriphers 2 isn't, and neither is Frequency 2. So, again, you can check the Steinberg website for that as well to find out the comparison between the versions. But that's just to show you that this track that we're gonna use throughout this series and all these chapters will be Cubase 12 Pro. So here's a track, Turbo Kid, synth wavy type number, and we're gonna play the track, and then we're gonna go through the first one in this deep dive, which will be the sampler track. So there you go, you get the idea. Now let's go into the sampler track. So first things first, I'm going to show you the layers within sampler track and how you can actually use it at different levels to get a certain sound, and how it can get it to work for you as well. So, for instance, the beats. So this breakbeat here, let me just highlight it and cycle it. This breakbeat here. So what I did here in this track was I went to the sampler track. Really easily, you can right click, you can create a sampler instrument. Also, you can open the lower pane and you can see a zone here, a sampler zone. Obviously, if you have the lower pane open and you click on an audio file, you get a chance to actually drag and drop it in if you choose to, like that. Really, really easy. I'm not going to do that to create a track. So it's really easy to create a sampler track. And it's great to be able to really quickly expressively play as instrument a sample, and that's really a key feature to sampler track. It's been a long time since we've been able to do something like this without using, say, for instance, Halion, or maybe even something like Contact. So now we can actually build it into Cubase, sampler track. This is version 2, by the way. We've gone a bit further up and added a few more really, really cool features. So this one is really great to be able to actually just go, right, I want to get a sample, right, I want to play it expressively, but it goes much, 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 much deeper. So we're going to show you this now. So here's my audio break that I've shown you, just an audio WAV file. Double click on it, you can see it there. I can zoom in and out. Now, in my sample track here, you can see I've got it chopped up into regions. So what I did was literally just chopped it up and just created a MIDI pattern out of that, a MIDI groove. It gives you the actual feel of the break, like any sampler from way back in the days. It gives you the ability to chop samples up, and it's really, really cool. So let's show you how it's done. Again, quickly going to show you quick sampler track, right click sampler track. I'm going to call it test. Really easy. Blank sampler track. Here's our break. I'm going to drop it in. Now, we can actually resize the windows, so you're not just constrained to the lower pane. We have multi-monitor support, so if you have multiple monitors, we can actually choose to drag this across to another monitor and have a full screen sampler track. We can also break it out here so it's undockable. So we do that and it's in a separate window and we can work within that. I kind of like to keep within the window and just open it up a bit more to see what's going on and I can tuck it back. But again, Cubase is fully customizable with the windows and the window sets and your key commands and your macros. So you can actually just do it to taste, really. I'm on a laptop here, so this works quite well. Anyway, so there's the break, and now really cool slice mode here. You can see you've got playback and slice, picture mod, filter, and the amplitude. So I go to slice mode, really easy. I turn slice mode on, you can see there, bang. Like, this is like a godsend from back in the days. There's no waiting to calculate or anything like that. It's instant. And it's not just set to our algorithms. Like, I mean, it's really great that it's picked up exactly what I needed to pick up. But you can see here there's little bits that it might have not picked up and stuff. And that maybe because that's a bit quieter, that's absolutely fine. You have full control over the threshold. So you can actually zoom in and how much you want the algorithm to pick up, peaks and transient wise. We can even choose different transient modes. So we have transient and grid, and then manual mode. So you can actually then manually put in your own chops if you need to. So I like transient mode. It picks up more or less what I need it to do. We can choose our fade in and fade outs and stuff. Really great. And if you see next to here, there's a drag MIDI phrase to project button. So really simple. Here's our break. There's our channel, test channel. Literally just drag the MIDI groove. Bang, there it is. Really simple. Really easy. And now we get that to see the actual groove. And now with the groove, we can actually then choose to, for instance, remix that groove. And do all sorts of funky stuff like that. So, I mean, that is a godsend to be able to quickly do something like that. So chopping in there is amazing. And of course, you get the full groove, so you can actually then delete the rest and just use the MIDI like a sampler. So you don't have to keep your audio. I haven't left the audio in there for an example for you. If you like to keep your projects tidy and good housekeeping, then you can just delete that track, and then you have your own sampler track. And then that's your sampler track ready to roll, save within the project. So really cool. That's the first layer. Really simple. Just to quickly show you one more thing. Let me just delete that again, because we've already shown that now. Remove tracks. Here's a break I did earlier. Right, we know all that. So back into our sampler track, and a quick to show you here is we have different modes within the playback mode. So I'm from the days of the old days, samplers, 950s, MPCs. I'm from that world where it's analog, and I like the analog feel, the flavour. Lo-fi-ish, even though it's kind of a modern thing to say, a term, it's that kind of 12-bit sound. I like that from the Akai S950s and stuff like that. So now that they've imparted different types of play modes. So you have standard, high, best, vintage, and extreme. So I like to go vintage mode because I'm old school. Vintage mode, then we've got options. So we have 8-bit, 10-bit, and 12-bit. So you can really get this break sounding more organic, more sort of analog. And I find that it's quite easy to mix them kind of sounds within a project. So you have like the light with the dark, the rough with the smooth. Especially with breakbeats, you want them to be a bit crunchy and stuff like that. You don't want it too clean, and this gives you the option either way. And obviously, it's not just for breaks, sampler track, but this can be a bass, it can be a vocal, it can be a string. I love the ability to be able to actually crunch the sound down and make it more gritty. Make it more analog. So let's have a listen. And that's the vintage mode, 12-bit. Let's go 8-bit, and you can hear now. You can hear now the sort of harmonics coming in now. So from like 10k onwards, you're getting that sort of coming in. See, that's great. I think it adds a bit of air to the breaks. It makes them breathe a bit more. And obviously, you can do it to taste. You can actually choose your rate as well. How many kilohertz you want to go down? Sorry, how many hertz you want to go down? What turntable speed do you want? Do you want 45? Do you want 78? Now we're going back in time. $33, 10-bit. I think 10-bit's happy medium with maybe a 45. But I just like really grungy beat. I just really like grungy beats. That's just what I do. So if you want to keep the sort of analog flavor of the old samplers, 12-bit's definitely probably the best to go for. 12-bit 33, this is like your sampler realm. That. And of course you can go extreme and all that kind of stuff as well. I just like vintage mode. I think vintage mode 12-bit 33 is a nice happy medium for the old school samplers if you're going for that kind of sound. So anyway, that's what you can do with the first layer, no pun intended, of the sampler track. So let's go another level to that now. So that was the breaks that I used, and now we're going to go to bass. So if we go to this channel here, which is bass. So there's a sub bass in here. Let's zoom in a bit so we can see more of it. This is a sub bass. It'd be hard to pick this up unless you've got headphones or like a nice sub or good neighbors. It's like a little sub note. Let's show you the MIDI. Really simple, just 2 notes, and they're slightly a bit off as well. That's just I like to leave things a little bit unquantized, a little bit loose. That's just my thing. So obviously, if you were really stuck with that, you could just you could highlight them all and press Q, and then everything goes back on. But I don't want to do that. So here is the sub. Now it's really cool, really fat sub. So again, this is the next level of sampler track. So if I open the sampler track, you can see here there's a sub bass. So this was from scratch, how I sort of trimmed it and found the sound that I needed to get. Really, really cool thing. So let's show you from scratch. Sub bass track, this is what it looks like, and this is how I more or less kind of set it up. So it's a sample, it's out of the media bay. Really simple, went into media bay and just type sub. If you ever want to do that, you can go into the media bay on the right hand side. I can just type in whatever I want to look for, sub, kick, snare. You get a collated massive list of all the samples that are within the media bay. And this is all the default stock stuff that comes with whichever version of Cubase that you buy, which is pretty much all the content is the same across the versions. As far as audio samples are concerned, you can choose to show by media types. I only want to see WAV files because I'm dealing with WAV files right now. And then you get to see all the different types of sub. And that's all I did. So I dragged the sub into sampler track, so you can do that from media bay. You can actually just grab a sample and drag it into media bay. It's really simple. And that's another thing that I love about sampler track is you can literally just go in here. You can just type sub, for instance, and then you can click on the sub. You can monitor it, even though it's not really properly a sub, but then you can create a sampler track from there. So for media bay, you can really quickly, there's loads of ways of creating the sampler track. So here's a sub. So yeah, it's a nice sub. So really simple, like any sampler, you can top and tail. That's what we call it, top and tailing. So you can actually choose to zoom in on a section that you want with our start and end points. So I can just really then zoom in and pick up a note. Now, as you can see, it's quite quiet. So we have clip gain built into the sampler track now, which is amazing. So I can then say, okay, give me more volume. And I can just go like that and really bring up the volume now to get to here what I need to hear. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit more just so I can actually zero in on what I need to see. And you can see here now, there's the note. That's what I want. I want that note, that little fat note in the middle there. Now you can hear bits of clicking. So clicking, obviously, because it's a sine wave and the points crossing over, there's clicking points. Really easily remedied by here going to the snap to zero crossing. So you turn that on now, and that means that it's literally going to take off the clicks and snap it to the real points where it can actually remove them, either end at the start or end point. And now you'll hear it be a lot smoother. Perfect. So back in the sampler days, I know I keep saying this, but this is where I'm from. We did a lot of, like I used the Akai S950, the Yamaha A3000, 4000. MPCs, all that kind of stuff. It's the same theory and concept. This is what we did. We chopped samples because they had lower memory, and then you'd make your own samples out of them chops. And this is the same for basses. This is exactly how it was done. This is why the sampler track I think is really powerful, because it is literally a sampler now. So there's my note. Now I want to make that a bass line. I want to make it my own custom bass signature sound. Really simple. So I've topped and tailed. I've done the zero crossing point. Now I need to loop this. I want to loop this. Now if you look in the loop section here, there's different types of loop: continuous, alternate, once, until release, alternate until release. I'll show you an alternate in a minute because that's a really cool one that doesn't mimic, it actually behaves just like the old samplers. The alternate looping, which was a really cool trick for getting consistent, interesting soundscapes and strings. So for that, we don't want that. We want continuous because we want it to just be a continuous loop. So I turn on continuous. So I open it up full here now so I can see I've turned on continuous. There you go. Here's the loop. And if I zoom in, you can see our loop points. So our loop region, I'm going to bring it in either side. You can see that it's way out here, so we just want it to bring it in, snap it in. Absolutely really simple. The green region is your loop range, and it's that easy. So now I have a constant sub sound. And that's it's that easy. So obviously because it's snapping as well, so we can actually choose which parts to loop, which regions to loop with this green loop region. So it's really easy. Like I say, this is probably the best case where you can actually choose to open and undock the window so you can see exactly what you're doing as far as looping is concerned. So yes, it's really easy. There's our loop points. We've got a constant loop because we turned the snap off, and now we have a constant bass sound. Now we can go even further now. So now I want to go into the sort of synthesis options of the sampler track because they're also tucked away in here. So we have pitch modulation. So if I click mod, we can actually, I'll undock it again so we can see here, and again it's fully resizable. We can actually see here the pitch. So we can actually choose to change the pitch envelopes. This is really, really cool to do like glides and boom-ins and all that kind of stuff, and even create breakpoints in within the envelopes and really change the structure of the sound with just the pitch. This is also capable for filter. It's also capable for, as you can see there, amplitude as well. So we can really, really sculpt the sound now in a sort of synthesized way. So I'm not going to go too mad with the pitch, but what I will do is I'll turn some of the glide up. So I'm going to turn a bit of the glide time up so we get a little bit of a differential sound between the notes as we go up or down the keyboard. And we get that sort of like a little different bump between notes, which is great for obviously trap and modern music and stuff like that. But also, if you're creating a bass line, it keeps the bass line quite interesting because not every single note is identical in pitch. You get that slight little bumping glide, and it works really well. And the kind of music that I make, like drum and bass, breakbeat, hip hop, like downbeat stuff, and that I like to have the basses kind of having a bit of movement, a bit of organicness rather than just static notes playing at different keys. And glide is great for that. It's not just for trap music. So there you go. So there's the glide, and now let's go to the filters. So I'll turn the filters on, and there's tons of filters here. Look at all these. I mean, there's loads of filters. I'm going to go with low pass 12. It's a favorite of mine. Now we have the algorithms to go with the filters. There's types. There's tube, classic, clip, bit red, which is bit reduction, rate, and rate KF. So this is up to you where you go with this, but you can really get a really fat sound out of this now with, like, say for instance, a bass like we're showing now. So great one here is drive. So we can actually choose to drive up the bass. So obviously it's imparting volume, but it's adding a nice bit of fatness to it as well. So now from a simple bass riff out of Media Bay, and now I'm starting to make it more my own. So let's leave the low pass 12 and tube on. I'm going to take the cutoff down because we don't need any of the top end in there because it's a sub. We only want that low. That's what we want. So now we can go into the LFOs. So there's two LFOs now built into the sampler track. This is V2 the sampler track, by the way. So there's two LFOs built in. The first one here, you can see now it's going to be assigned to the cutoff. It's already set on there already. And then I can just choose to then tweak my LFO. I'm going to do the shape. I'm going to change the frequency. I'm going to sync it to tempo and beat. And then I can just change the rate. Or I could just choose to tempo and re-trigger it. and you can choose any type of frequency step, or you can take that off and you can just use the mod wheel. So there's many options to this as well. So I like to just get that slight little bit of movement. I don't want to go too mad with it, but you could if you wanted to. And you can see the shape there. This is the actual shape. You can actually change the shape of the LFO. Kind of like quarters, to be honest. And now obviously I can take the rate back down and just add that little bit of movement, nothing too mad. There, that's what I'm happy with that. Or I could just go crazy and just take it all down here and just max it out, and then you get this. Kind of like drum and bass realm now. But this isn't a drum and bass track, so we won't really be showing that. And of course, with it being dictated by the cutoff, then we can actually choose to tweak the LFO with the cutoff. So that's really great. So now I can then go into the types of filters to counteract going into the cutoff, going into the LFO settings that I've chose. So a really good one here I like is the bit reduction. It really adds some really nastiness to the sound. And the drive will obviously impart more of that. Kind of like that. Let's change the LFO more now, the sync rate. So you get the idea. I mean, there's real power in there. And of course, it's up to you what filters you choose, what type of emulation you choose for tube, tape, classic, or clip, how much drive you impart, how much LFO rate you use, and of course there's a second LFO to go along with that as well. So there's many options, and everything within Sampler Track, right click, can be added to the quick control set. So if I close this down and leave it back docked, quick controls here, this is the default settings for the quick controls, but again, like Cubase, with it being fully customizable, you can customize anything, especially the quick controls. So you can actually then choose to have, if you have a controller like this, for instance, like the Akai, or whatever, with buttons, knobs, sliders, all that kind of stuff, you can choose to make you maybe have a hardware hands-on control sampler type experience. Really easy. Right click anything within the Sampler Track. You can choose to add it to a control set here, and of course you can MIDI map it, because Cubase 12 has brand new MIDI mapping facilities for controllers now, so you can really get hands-on with it. You're not just stuck with a mouse or, for instance, with the trackpad, dialing in certain, intricacies of values. It's fine. You can actually just put hands-on, map it, hands-on control. Really easy. Really easy to do. And again, the last module is the really simple one, ADSR. So it's the amplitude. So you can choose to, how much you want it to release from, or how much you want it to attack from, how much release you want to tighten. Really cool. If you're doing the clip gain function, you can actually see it's within one window, so you can actually choose to do volume, checking your ADSR type stuff out as well, so you're not just tabbing around loads of windows. It's really cool. In the case of the sub bass, we also have options to reverse the sample, and a really important one, we get to choose monophonic mode. It's a sub. There's no stereo information. It's a single sub, so we can actually choose to make it monophonic and then glide, and it's a bit more tidier as well. So really cool. So let's show you another cool trick as well now in this, another level. Another layer. So the next one is, for instance, I have this sub now. Let's make it a bit more appealing. Turn the drive up, something like that. So I'm really happy with that. So a next level to Sampler Track is, if I look here on the right, I get the option now to transfer this. This is amazing. So we can actually choose to transfer it to Groove Agent, the full-blown Groove Agent that you can buy separately off our site, or Groove Agent SE, which is built into all versions of Cubase, Elements, Artist, and Pro, or Halion, the full-blown Halion. We've just released Halion 7, which is out now. So this incorporates really, really well. Patchop 2, which is in the version now we're showing, Cubase 12 Pro, and Artist. And then we have Backbone, our beat plugin, which is amazing. There's loads of resources online about that as well. Again, for another video. It's a really, really powerful instrument. It's great for beat making, great for layering, great for resynthesizing stuff, and just creating a fat sort of organic drum sound without using samples, which is amazing. I can go here, I can say transfer to Patchop 2, and literally now that then gets transferred, if I unmute it, to Patchop 2. And then from Patchop 2, I can then choose to, because Patchop 2 is great for mixing samples together, 2 layers together, you have an A layer and a B layer. So now I get the granular synthesis options of Patchop 2. And then layer B, I can then load up another sample, or I can just keep layer A, and then I can delve within that now and start using the filters within Patchop 2, the granular cutoffs and randomized features, and really then start to sculpt this sound. If I choose to do that, it's all in here, all within Patchop 2. Or I could just say, okay, let's maybe make this sound a bit more nastier again now. So bit reduction. Okay, we know that's really full on that. Something like that. Something like that. I can then say, okay, put me in Groove Agent SE, please. And like that, 2 clicks, we're now in Groove Agent SE. And you can see there the sample. And if I play the pad, there's a sample. So we can actually then create a custom drum kit of synthesized sounds. So you can actually then make a sound design kit within Groove Agent SE, which we'll show in the last chapter of this deep dive. So millions and millions and millions of possibilities within Sampler Track. And of course, it's up to your own imagination where you go with it, but it's not just for playing a sample straight out of MediaBait, although that's its main core function. You can see it goes much deeper. And finally, quick to show you, we have audio warp mode now. So audio warp mode means that we can actually choose to time stretch. So wow, another level to the sampler track. So we can actually choose, for instance, different types of mode. So musical mode and solo mode. So musical mode would be more for like stuff like basses, well, maybe not even basses, but like strings and stuff like that. We can actually choose to stretch it. So we can actually, if I choose the speed, you can see it changing. So we can actually really time stretch sounds. And I can legato it, and then I can choose maybe solo mode, and then I can actually choose to change the formant. So this would be great for vocals, for instance. You won't really get this on a sub, but it's just to show you what it's capable of. And this is a trick for getting really deep sub basses. I'm actually stretching the bass and the formant to get like a lower kind of sub off the same key. Really, really cool trick. Again, if with a vocal, a great thing as well. For a vocal, you'd use solo and legato, and then probably speed and formant to get the sound. It's almost like you can get a sort of auto-tune stretch with it as well. I find with breaks and stuff like that as well, so you can also kind of get that old Akai type sound as well. If you change the speed and formant. Musical mode is great for strings and stuff like that, and basses, for instance, as well. Or if you have a breakbeat within the sampler track, it's great to be able to just stretch it within the sampler track, and that's great to warp it. So you don't have to use a WAV file and then use the audio warp facilities in Cubase, which are great for audio files. You can do it within sampler track. So especially if you play the sample warped to tempo. So it's great, great, great feature. Finally, you can see here we have a string, and I'm going to show you quickly one of the looping things, which I think is really cool. Here's a string. Now in this track, I've got it looped. So the alternate looping, which is what I really wanted to show you. I love this. I know I keep going on about the Akai S950, but this is, I think, maybe the only sampler that had this feature as far as alternate looping is concerned. I think maybe the 1000 might have had it as well. I'm not sure the 3000 did. No, I'm pretty certain it probably didn't. So this is really cool for creating interesting soundscapes. So here is the string sound. So what I did was alternate looping. Here it is with no loop. Let's play higher up the key so we're not waiting for ages. Now, continuous loop, we've shown it before. Which is, in some capacities, I think not relevant. It's not interesting enough for a string. I don't think it's relevant to have continuous looping. I don't think personally. I think for basses it's invaluable. But for strings, I think this is always the go-to for me, alternate looping. So what alternate looping means, it's going to go forward and then it's going to go backwards. Now, as you play low down the octaves, things get really more interesting. So like this. Really cool. So you can see the options with this now. If I'm putting the filters on and all that kind of stuff, and I'm changing the breakpoints in the amplitude and the pitches and stuff, and putting a bit of glide on, I can really sculpt up a sort of synthesized sound. Like I make my own pads and strings. Really, 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 really powerful. Finally, within Sampler Track, not many people know this because it's tucked away, but we have a library. So if I go to load track preset, there's a library for the Sampler Track. So if I go to, for instance, Alien Extraction, I can load Alien Extraction and I get, let's put higher up the octave. And of course, with it not being in monophonic mode, I've turned it off. I can play like chords. Really, really cool. But to add to that, if you look here now, within this library, it's called Kaleidoscope, by the way. In this library, within the Sampler Track, there's many, many sounds, but there's a really cool thing I want to show you. If I press E, the edit channel, you can actually see we've actually added presets for the sounds within the Sampler Track. So you get to see now how Steinberg have created this sound. Like they've added a tube going into an octaver, going into a bit crusher, and then finally going into a room-verse reverb. So you get to see how the pros have made real sound design presets. This is how this sound was made. Like not everyone would probably use the tube, even though it's a great plugin. They might use it once, maybe in a master bus, or maybe not use it at all. Octaver. When would you draw for the octaver? You know, would you know to put the tube into an octaver, into a bit crusher? And that's what you get these type of sounds. So if I bypass all them sounds, different world entirely. So you get to learn about sound design as well. So Sampler Track is an absolute killer instrument tucked away within Cubase.